We obviously have had concerns about vote by mail. Some people have grave concerns. They believe that it is inherently corrupt. Others have reasonable concerns, I think, about safety, but don't say the entire system is corrupt. I'm in that category. I don't think there's a whole bunch of nefarious actors getting together and stealing an election in some massive conspiracy and then somehow managing to keep it a secret. However, I do think that there are nefarious actors out there, and we got to do everything we can to mitigate something like stealing or cheating from happening. That's why you have rules, right? And it's reasonable. But there are some things that are simply inexcusable. You'll get mistakes every so often. Some of you have had 2 ballots mailed, for example, or a dead relative get a ballot. And, depending on how often you are clearing out the voter rolls and comparing them against records, you'll either have more mistakes or fewer mistakes. Kind of depends. But it is inexcusable for someone to get 16 ballots addressed to her unit, all under different names that she had never heard of before. I still, at my apartment, get mail to someone who lived in my apartment at some point.
Same.
Right? It happens. You question how it's still happening because, I've lived in my apartment for X amount of years. How is it? But it happens. But we recognize the name. It's like, oh, it's Jody. It's Jody again. Oh, I got another one from Martin. In this case, this woman, her name is Jami Vizaya, lives in Bellevue. And she told King 5 she got 16 different named ballots.
There was about 9 voter registration ballots that were not mine. So I thought that was strange. So I ended up returning them to the post office here.
And then what happened just a few days later? Care to let us know? She got more.
Yeah.
She got more ballots. Started off by 9, which is already alarming. And then you get a whole bunch more. And she's trying to figure out, well, how exactly could this have happened? Even if all these people somehow used to have the same unit number as she currently has, it still didn't really make any sense to her.
Management said no one's lived here for 3 months. Why didn't I get all of their other mail forwarded here, or junk mail, or anything like that?
Now, if it was one person, you could argue, well, maybe they just don't get a lot of mail, right? Or maybe they changed their address everywhere else, but they didn't update their voter registration. Okay, it happens. But in this case, can it be possible that all of those people fall into that category? No. I'm not even saying it's possible. It's impossible. It is absolutely impossible. So she's trying to figure out what's going on. And then she reaches out to King 5 instead of doing the smarter thing, which would have been to reach out to the Jason Rantz Show on AM 770 KTTH. Because unlike King 5, I could make stories go national very easily. And unlike King 5, I'm competent. But they went to them. And so they reached out to the King County Elections Office, someone we're very familiar with because we reach out to Kendall Levon Hodson many times, who I have found, and I think it's a she, right?
Yeah.
Is there a email signature?
Well, no.
Pronouns? Then don't assume. Kendall, they, for now.
You set me up for that one.
I know. I always do, and it's the same joke each time, and you always fall for it. I find Kendall to be quick to respond, when I reach out with questions. And again, maybe it's because she or he knows that if they don't, it becomes a bigger nightmare than it's worth. But I always get responses when I reach out. And King 5 reached out and said, what's going on? How did this happen? And then this woman, Jami Vizaya, speaks with the chief of staff. She did it over the phone.
In 30 years of voting, I've never had that many ballots that don't belong to me,
Would you be all right with our folks coming to pick them up from you? That's going to be probably the easiest way for us to sort it out.
Are you going to make sure that it gets expedited to the recipients.
We need to get them a replacement ballot. We'll get that out. If we need to, update their registration to a different address, we'll do that as well.
So how did this happen? This is what the chief of staff wrote to King 5. Even if someone gets a second ballot or more, whether under their name or someone else's, we'll only ever count one ballot per registered voter with their matching signature. But how did they get the 16? Doesn't that seem like the bigger question? We can actually see in our system when we have mailed ballots to them and updated their addresses and things like that. If we need to get them a replacement ballot, we'll get that out. But again, how did this happen? And unless I missed it in the story, which I read and watched, they don't answer that question, do they? Right? Did I miss it?
No, they didn't.
They didn't answer the question, which, again, is why you don't go to King 5 with these kinds of stories. You come to me. Because I'll ask that question and say, oh, no. I like your answer, but that's not the question I asked. How does this happen? When this kind of thing happens, and why I say it's inexcusable, is because it will breed distrust. And frankly, that should breed distrust. It should. It absolutely should. Because I've heard from some folks who say they didn't even receive their ballot. I was talking to a guy named Eric today from Renton. He sent me a message on Instagram, Jason Rantz. And he ended up going to the elections office to pick up a ballot because he didn't get it. And I'm wondering, did they mail it to the right place? Did they maybe our friend Jami Vizaya got it? I should ask her, was an Eric so-and-so in on your list? Maybe that's who got it. But that's inexcusable. And then we get a whole bunch of emails every single time there's an election. I shouldn't say a whole bunch, a handful. Talking about how they get ballots of either someone who died or someone who moved out of state. And I got one earlier in the week about, I think it was either Monday, or maybe it was Sunday. I checked my email. And someone had said they had received a ballot for a dead relative who's been dead for over 2 years. And so we reached out to the Snohomish County Auditor, Garth Fell, to say, okay, how does this happen? And what did he say, or what did his people say? It was basically, we check records, we look at obituaries, and we will clear these people as often as we can, as often as we see them.
I think they said something about the Department of Health updates it too. And
yeah. But it's clearly not working if people are still getting these ballots years after their death. Does it indicate that there's cheating going on? No, it doesn't. It indicates that there's potentially some incompetence, and it indicates cheating could happen. And that's where I have the problem. Cheating could happen. Does it? Sometimes. Does it usually make a difference? No, it doesn't. Does that matter? No, we should prosecute. Do we ever prosecute? Seems like we never do. Even though we know that we have these instances that occur, not just in Washington state, but around the country. And part of me feels so uncomfortable even talking about this because I know some people hear this and then immediately say, see, it's proof. The whole system is rigged, and then they don't vote. And that's not my intent. That is not my intent. You should vote. You should vote today. You should vote immediately. You should vote as often as you can. Well, if you got 16 ballots, you might as well. No, I'm kidding. But you should vote. Because the earlier you vote, if something does happen, if something does go wrong, you have more time to address it. You have more time to address it. Now, Pete Serrano is going to be on the show at the bottom of this hour. He's running for the Attorney General. And we talk a little bit about this, but every single candidate that I've spoken to, Republican candidate, including ones who in the past maybe were a little bit more suspicious of how votes are cast here, even they're all saying the exact same thing. Vote now. Vote now, vote early. Republicans as a whole, surprisingly so, have gotten on board that and have actually started to see significant results. And maybe it takes some massive win in places where we don't expect them because of the early vote for people to finally say, okay, I feel a little bit more comfortable. Ultimately, a lot of the folks who are uncomfortable, they still vote. They just vote on the last day. But, man, that is still, I think, risking it. Whitman County is dealing with some issues because you still got some people there, somewhere between 200 and 300 people who have not received their ballots yet. That's, of course, a problem. You should have received it a week and a half ago, right, at the latest. Because last time I checked, did we double check? Is the election still on Tuesday?
Yeah, it is.
And we'll start our live election coverage at 3?
Yes.
Which is just when I start my normal show, but will be all election coverage?
Right.
Okay. 200 to 300 people haven't received their ballots, and no one at this point seems to know why. The post office isn't sure what happened. They say they're investigating because, like in most cases, counties will have a third-party vendor that puts the ballots into envelopes and then delivers them to the postal service. Now, according to the auditor's office, per Cairo 7, the ballots made it to the facility. They were processed on October 16th, and they were scanned into the USPS system. From there, no one can seem to pinpoint exactly what happened. In a news release, we're told that we should rest assured we are diligently investigating this matter. But I'm not going to rest assured. It seems odd. And again, do I think that there's some cheating going on? No, because you have no idea who the 200 or 300 people who are even getting their ballots support. I don't even know who it is. It's not like they say, okay, here are the Republican ballots, here are the Democrat ballots. They don't do that. So if this is cheating, it's really bad cheating, right? It's just not good cheating. I suppose if they knew it was going to one particular neighborhood that has a higher number of, reported Republicans or Democrats, whatever it is. But I don't believe that. It was clearly a screw up. But when people point out that there is a security question about transfer of ballots, even when it comes to just putting a return ballot in a drop box or in just going to the post office and dropping it in, this just adds fuel to the fire of concerns. And y'all are telling us on the left that even if you bring something up, a reasonable question, one that's brought up in good faith about election integrity and security, that you're an election denier. And then you have stories like this. Are we not allowed to ask some questions here? And again, I say this as someone who does not think that this is indicative of cheating. But I have some questions, and I think it's on them to convince even the folks who are already hyper skeptical.